Alright, YouTube. Welcome back to my YouTube channel for the Seth Cross. I'm the Seth Cross. And we are going to get together today and have another episode of Commander Craft. On this series, we get together, twitch.tv/thesethcross, 8 o'clock on Saturday nights, Eastern Time. And we make a deck live. For YouTube, you guys see the cuts in between like every 10 cards or so, and we talk about why we put these cards into the deck. While I am allowed to use resources like EDHREC and Scryfall, the trick is that I am not allowed to go to the EDHREC page for the commander and just load up 100 cards, because while that would probably get you a pretty consistent list, that doesn't seem nearly as fun as like actually trying to figure out what we can do with this deck and everything. I can still use EDHREC to go to like the mono green page for today, or lands deck for today, etc. Elves, +1/+1 counters. I can look at all those things if I want, but I just can't go straight to Sutina until I am looking at the last 52 to 62 cards. So that block of 10 between 52 cards and 62 cards. Of course, if you go on to like this video, remember to like, comment on this video, and subscribe to the channel so we can hit our 500 goal by the end of 2025. You can also join us over on the Discord, where we talk about Magic all the time, among other topics. There's a link in the video description. Completely free, completely public. You could follow me over on Blue Sky if you want to talk about Magic. You can check out all my decks, including previous Commander Crafts, over on my Moxfield account. Video description also in the video description. Link also in the video description. Or you could go over to Patreon, where I will be doing a playtest video where it's called Seth Goes Fishing. I will be doing that for Patreons only, or Twitch subscribers and Patreons only. So if you want to support as simple as $1 a month, I would appreciate it. But of course, you don't have to if you don't want to. Perfectly understand. So for today, we are going to be building a Sutina, speaker of the Tajuru. This is one of the Jumpstart commanders for Foundations. It is a 2 green, 3 mana value Elf Scout, 2/2. When she enters, you search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So she's a bit of a ramp herself. And whenever she attacks, you can return a land you control to its owner's hand. And when you do, you can put a 1 counter on target creatures. So, some of the things that we're going to be looking out for, of course, are other Landfall synergies, because we're going to be able to keep getting lands into our hand and then play them, and lands into our hand and then play them again. There are some +1/+1 synergies. Of course, elf synergies between lands, mono green, and +1/+1 counters will probably be there. We want to be ramping up really fast, so maybe some kind of big spells. Maybe our curve will be a little bit on the higher side like that. And I think for the first 11 cards that we pick out, I want to focus on other landfall based effects. So we're going to be probably looking at like a Rampaging Balos, a Lotus Cobra, etc, those kind of things. I'm going to get together with Twitch chat really quick. We're going to spend a few minutes. We're going to get 11 more cards in here, so we go up to 12. That way we can go from 12 to 22 to 32, 42, 52, and then of course again the last 10 until we get the lands. 52 to 62 will be from Sutina's actual page on EDHREC. So give us a quick second and we're going to get back with some cards. It did not take very long for us to get 11 cards that pump us up to 12. Their landfall is tried and true, you know. We're going to go through these 11 really quick. We have a lot of categories here. It seems like the deck's trying to do a lot of things. Some of these categories are your core categories. You have card advantage, you have ramp, and everything like that. Some of these are kind of just like extra little perks. Like, we're not trying to fill them out as categories necessarily, but I wanted to just highlight that they were there. So don't think like, oh, we're trying to do all these things. That's not what it is. Starting with Tireless Tracker. Human Scout, 3/2, landfall. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, investigate, which means getting a clue token, and for 2 mana you can sack the artifact to draw a card. Then whenever you sack a clue, you get a 1/1 counter on Tireless Tracker. Just clue tokens, nice and simple. Evolution Sage, with our commander caring about 1/1 counters and some of these other cards caring about counters so far, I think Mox pointed this out. It's a very good addition. Landfall, whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, proliferate. Choose any number of permanents and or players and then give them another counter of each kind they are already there. Jesus. yeah, just it's going to be doing counter stuff while we're doing counter stuff. Speaking of counter stuff, 3 mana 0/0 that enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter. This is Mossborn Hydra. Also has Trample and Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, double the number of +1/+1 counters on this creature. Starts off small, 1, doubles to 2, then becomes 4, then becomes 8, then becomes 16. Only gets monumentally bigger. So if you are somehow getting lots of land drops, which we'll talk about that probably somewhere in this video, this can very quickly become like, it's a small rinky-dink little creature to something very, very, very dangerous. Scythe Cat Club. First of all, $35 friggin'. Holy crap. This probably comes in Sutina's Jumpstart pack, and I can see why. This is a 2 mana trample 2/2, which in it of itself is not like the worst thing ever. Landfall. Whenever land you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, double the number of +1/+1 counters on that creature instead. First landfall, you can put a counter on Cub. Second time, you could then make it to 2 counters. Next turn, first land, goes to put a counter on, gives it to 3. Second landfall, now it gets a 6. Now it's an 8/8 trample. Similar to the Mossborn Hydra, it's just that you need to have 2 landfalls in the same turn. Not the end of the world, not super hard to do. I have Tireless Provisioner here in life gain and also in ramp. It is a 3 mana 3/2 elf scout, similar to our commander, except she's a 2/2. Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, create a food token or a treasure token. So you can either be getting ramp or life gain. Again, not trying to fill out the life gain thing. This is not necessarily a life gain focused deck. We're just saying that it can happen and highlighting when it does. Lotus Cobra. Very basic landfall. It's a landfall card. It's a 2 mana 2/1 snake. Whenever land you control enters, add 1 mana of any color. Obviously, we're going to mostly be adding green, but it basically just says every land that enters this turn is 2 mana. Tireless Provisioner, again, we already talked about that. In this little recursion category, again, not trying to build a graveyard deck here, at least so far. 6 mana, elemental, 5/7, has reach, which y'all know I love my reach and my vigilance. You may play lands from your graveyard, so like your evolution, Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanses are going to be pretty good getting all your forests out. If a land entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. With like something like the Cub, 1 land, boom, you get the counter, and then you also get to double the counters. It is that good. And then of course, like getting the 2 treasures, getting the 2 clues, etc. Mox also suggested Evolution Witness. This is a 3 mana 2/1 Elf Shaman Mutant. Ooh, sorry about that. For 2 mana, you can adapt 2, which is putting 2 counters on it if it has no counters. Don't super care about that, but whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on the Witness, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. Just because sometimes we're going to want to bring things back. Some people are going to remove our stuff because they're terrible people. Then we have, this is what I do think the deck is going to do based on just some of what I saw for Landfall tokens. Avenger of Zendikar, 7 mana elemental, very well known card, 5/5. When it enters the battlefield, you make 0/1 green plant creature tokens for each land you control. Then, Landfall, whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you can put a 1/1 counter on each plant creature you control. So you make a bunch of creatures and then you put counters on them. With some of the things you've already seen us talking about, that means it's going to happen very, very quickly. Even the Proliferate, for instance, from the evolution stage. Counter from the first land, all your 1/2 or all your 0/1s become 1/2s, then they become 2/3s off of 1 land. Then if you have the Green Warden out, the counter happens, it gets doubled, they're already 2/3s off the bat. Then you proliferate twice because of the evolution stage and the Green Warden. Now they're 4/5s off of 1 land. Not bad. Rampaging Bowels. Again, well-known landfall card. 6/6 Trample Beast, 4/6 mana, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get 4/4 green beast creature tokens. Just good value. Going wide, going wide. Scoot Swarm, again, another probably well-known landfall card. It is an insect. It's a 1/1 for 3 mana. Whenever land you control enters, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. If you control 6 or more lands, you just get another Scoot Swarm. Then, as you are playing lands, they all have that ability. You just keep getting Scoot Swarms. It gets out of control really fast once you get to 6 lands, and I do not think that's going to be hard with this deck because we are going to be playing lands all the damn time. Yeah. And that's it. We're going to add 10 more cards to this. That went really fast. I'm going to try to go fast again, and we'll be right back. Hold on. We added 10 more cards. I don't have a good follow-up or a clever thing to say. I do want to highlight that a couple of these cards are only half of the effect for the category that they're in. I asked chat to remind me, but I'm just going to get it out of the way very early, and we're going to start, mainly because we're going to start off with one of them. Courser of Crewfix and Oracle of Moldiah, a few cards down, are in the card advantage category, but they're kind of only half of a card advantage card because of their selective card advantage. And the reason what I mean by that, Enchantment Creature Centaur, 3 mana, 2/4, play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card if it's a land card. So, when you are getting lands on top of your graveyard, on top of your library, you can try to get through them in order to get to other cards. And then, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. I don't know why that wasn't just Landfall, but here we are. Another good card advantage card, and this is a legit just card advantage card because we are talking about making so many tokens. 2 mana artifact, you tap it to draw a card. Activate only if you've created a token this turn. Simple, easy, extra card every turn. You can pay 8 mana and sacrifice this after tapping it to create a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi creature token. I don't think there's a world, except for very, very late game, where you would do that. Because I think the consistent extra card advantage is just too good. Loot! Our loot! Exuberant Explorer, little beast noble. Oh, he's a cutie, costs 3 berries of 1/4. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. And for 6 mana, tap it. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands you control from among them, and put it onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So this is a bit card advantage and a bit ramp. Card advantage in the 6 mana ability, ramp in the sense that you can be putting down 2 lands a turn. Just good value. Oracle Moldiah, again, only half of a card advantage. You may play, this is Elf Shaman, 4 mana, 2/2. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, play with the top card revealed, and you may play the top card if it's a land card. Again, just trying to cycle through getting your lands to get to other things, right? Like, you want to play the lands, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with having lots of lands in a landfall deck, but you do want to make sure that you are like also getting to the spells and stuff too, that like your landfall spells, for instance, so that you are doing things other than just playing lands. Speaking of just playing lands, that had nothing to do with this card. This is Tome of Legends. I just like this card in general. It has beautiful art. It is a 2 mana artifact, enters with a page counter on it. When your commander enters the battlefield or attacks, you put a page counter on it, and for 1 and tap it, you remove a page counter to draw a card. It's just, again, consistent turn after turn card draw, especially like we have some proliferate stuff, or we might have some other ways of putting extra counters on things as we go through the deck, and I just think this will be a card that will consistently help us keep our handful of, you know, at least 7 cards, if not more. Bristly Bill Spine Sower. For 2 mana, this plant druid is a 2/2. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you can put a 1/1 counter on target creature. Fine, good value. For 4 mana, no tapping required. Double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. The reason why I highlight the no tapping, blah blah blah, it's a mana sink. You can keep doing this for as long as you have 5 mana. It can lead to some big turns, especially when you do have a lot of mana, which you're going to have a lot of mana with a deck like this because you're always getting more lands. Hardened Scales. 1 mana enchantment. It just says if you're going to put a 1/1 counter on something that you control, you get that many +1. It's just an extra counter. When you're doing 1/1 counters, a single 1/1 counter becomes 2. It's double. Not bad. Good value. Otholith the Shattered Spine. 2 mana legendary artifact. If one or more +1/+1 counters would be put onto an artifact or a creature you control, that many +1 are put on it instead. And then this also comes with a 2 mana and tap ability to put a 1/1 counter on an artifact or a creature you control, but only at sorcery speed. You could cycle it, but I don't think you should, because I think there's enough value in this to warrant playing it for 2 mana. Burgeoning, hopefully with enough card advantage, we are going to have lots of cards in our hand, and then whenever an opponent plays a land, this 1-mana enchantment will allow you to put a land from your hand onto the battlefield and hit all your landfall triggers on other people's turns. Not bad. Over down by tokens, we have a couple more. A couple more. We have one more. Idol of Oblivion, we already talked about. Elsworn Giant, this is a 5-mana 5/3 giant with reach. You know I love my reach. Landfall, whenever a land enters your control, whenever a land you control enters, create a 1/1 Elf Warrior creature token. Again, we're just going to be going real wide with this deck. Even though Sutina does offer some +1/+1 counter synergies, I think our bread and butter is going to be that going wide, and then there's a few things to put counters on lots of stuff. So I think that is all of them. I think we hit 10. I'm going to cut this out for YouTube. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. So that means that we have to go and find 10 more. I am seeing that we are missing out on interaction so far. We're not going to find too many board wipes in mono green. Just saying. We're going to try to find some more of our card advantage and ramp, I think, really quick. And then we'll be right back. See you soon. And now we're back with some more, and we have filled out our card advantage. We've done the best we could with interaction. It's not great, but it's there. And yeah, we're gonna get right into it. The first card is, we're gonna be playing lots of lands, sometimes more lands than all of our opponents. Therefore, we're gonna turn those lands into card advantage. This Horn of Greed is a 3-mana artifact. Whenever any player plays a land, that player draws a card. A little bit tricky because you are essentially giving your opponents possible extra cards, but again, I think we're going to be playing enough extra lands, more than everybody else at the table, that this is okay. Keeping in mind also that anybody else who is casting like a cultivator or anything where you're putting the land onto the battlefield, that is not being played. So like you getting the extra landfalls off of the Oracle Moldier or the Courser of Krufix, that's different. So that matters, and because we're going to be having a lot of those cards, I think this is going to be better for us than it is for anybody else. Another card that we're going to have here, we do have a few creatures that are talking about getting huge, like the Mossborn Hydra. Sutina herself could be putting counters onto other creatures, etc. Rishkar's Expertise, 6-mana sorcery, draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control, and you can cast a spell with mana value 5 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So it's almost two kinds of card advantage, because one, you're drawing all the cards, and then you get to play something for free. Playing something for free is kind of akin to like a fraction of card advantage, but I digress. We're not going to get into like the breakdown of the math and stuff like that. Just, it is card advantage because you're drawing a lot of cards when you have some big creatures. Speaking of having big creatures, again, has nothing to do with the card that we're going to be talking about, stocking the pantry. I guess if you feed your creatures enough, they get big. This 1-mana enchantment, whenever you put 1 or more +1/+1 counters on a creature you control, you get a supply counter on stocking the pantry. 2, remove a counter from it, you get to draw a card. We went back and forth a little bit on like Elemental Bond, and Mox pointed out stocking the pantry, and this does seem like it's going to work way better than Elemental Bond when so many of our creatures enter the battlefield small. Like our tokens, only 1 or 2 of the things that are making tokens are making anything with 3 or greater power. So this will ultimately, I think, work out much better. As well as Tribute to the World Tree, this 3-mana green enchantment says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card of its power 3 or greater. That is essentially Elemental Bond. Otherwise, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So you get additional value in the sense of getting the counters if you're not drawing a card. Or you could be drawing a card. It depends. In general, I like the option of, not the option, but meeting the requirement one way or the other. Meeting a requirement, whether you have the 3 power or not. Over here, this is in counters, but it is also a form of card advantage. I didn't put it in card advantage, but it's also kind of a form of interaction in the sense of it makes your things indestructible. So if somebody's trying to board wipe and you are the one with the biggest board with your go wide board, you won't lose it. Inspiring Call is a 3-mana instant. Draw a card for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. Those creatures gain indestructible until end of turn. Again, if somebody's trying to board wipe you or something on their turn, you can use this as a response and keep all your things with counters. Otherwise, you can use this even if you're attacking and you don't want your creatures to die. You can just use it as a really big draw spell, if that's what it takes. Then we have down here Scavenging Ooze. This is a card that's going to get bigger over time. For 2 mana and a 2/2, you get an Ooze that has a 1 mana ability. Again, a mana sink ability doesn't require it to be tapped. Exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, put a 1/1 counter on this creature and you gain 1 life. A little bit of life gain, a little bit of counters, a little bit of grave hate, which can be very important in a lot of different metas, so absolutely love it. Down here in our interaction tab, we have Beast Within. Again, super well-known card, 3 mana instant, destroy target permanent. Its controller gets a 3/3 green beast. That's simple. You blow something up. Speaking of blowing something up, this actually does have something to do with the card we're going to talk about. This is Azuri's Prediction, probably the closest thing you're going to get to a board wipe in mono green. It also does do a little bit of what we want to do. I didn't put it in the token one because I'm a goober. Azuri's Prediction is an 8 mana sorcery. For each creature your opponents control, create a 4/4 green Phyrexian beast creature token. Was that always Phyrexian beast creature token? I don't remember. Each of those creatures fights a different one of those creatures, again referencing your opponent's creatures. A lot of times it will not be killing those other things, but tokens and killing the little things and blah blah blah. And then you just got to figure out a way to give everything like trample or something, you know, whatever. Or you just overrun people with creatures. That is also just a possibility. Similar to the Inspiring Call, except this one doesn't draw you cards. Heroic Intervention, well known. 2 mana, instant, permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Another well-known removal spell in mono green is Corrosive Grip. This one, super cool because it has split second, so no way it's going to be countered or anything. Well, not no way. Very rarely is it going to be countered. 3 mana, instant, split second, destroy target artifact or enchantment. There you go, we're up to date. I do have to add a few categories to a few things that I didn't, like Azuri's Prediction being tokens, and a Scavenging Ooze being, yes. The Inspiring Call being somewhat of a card advantage card. I'll do that really quick while we're adding 10 cards up to 42. Then we have 52. Then we get to look at Sutini's actual page and see what we missed. I think for this next group, what should we do? Because we're goodish on card advantage. Ramp, we just need a few little things, which isn't going to be crazy. We'll beef up the ramp, and then we'll see what else we get up to. But we will be right back with 10 more cards. Hold on. 10 more cards down. 10 more, then 10 more, then 38 more. But those are lands, and those are probably going to be pretty easy because I'm sure a lot of them are going to be forced. We're going to talk about the cards that we put in here. Mock specifically forced me to put... No, I'm just kidding. Doubling Season, I've been kind of not putting it in because I don't know why. But if an effect would make a token or a counter for you, it does that twice as much. So, yeah. Just, it's going to be there. No real reason not to put it in there, except for the cost. It is a $33 card. I was lucky enough to pull one out of a pack when it was on the list. If it wasn't for that, I don't think I would own one. So, do whatever is good for your wallet and your meta. Awaken the Woods. This is kind of a ramp, kind of a token card. It is an X green sorcery. You create X 1/1 green Forest Dried land card. Land creature tokens. They are lands that tap 4 green as they are forests, and they also are tokens, and they're 1/1s. Azusa, Lost But Seeking. We've been talking about playing additional lands a lot, and we didn't put in one of the classics, which is Azusa, 3 mana human monk, 1/2. You may play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. Hopefully, you just need to be... this with the Horn of Greed is actually really good, because even if you are drawing into your lands, then you could be playing them and drawing into other stuff after that. Speaking of mana, Jaheira, Friend of the Force, is going to be massive in this deck because for this 3 mana human elf druid, all your tokens are going to tap to add green mana. And it's a 2/3, great. Yeah, we're making lots and lots of tokens. We might as well make it so that those tokens do a lot of work for us. Speaking of whomst, Jaheira's Respite, this 5 mana instant, says search your library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the number of creatures attacking you. Put those cards onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. And it was the first card in a new category, which you can see in the center there, is the Fog category. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. Speaking of which, we do have Constant Mist, which is the other Fog. The thing with this one is a 2 mana instant. It does say creatures deal no combat damage this turn. You can have buyback, which is you get it back into your hand. You just sacrifice the land. And we have a few ways of getting lands back out of our graveyard, so it's really not that big of a deal. Plus, we are planning on ramping so hard that it shouldn't matter if we have to sack a land to stay alive until we can regrow or grow our token army, and then we just kill people. Stomp on their faces. Greensleeves Morrow Sorcerer is a 5 mana elemental star protection from planeswalkers and from wizards. Interesting. Power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control, so probably going to be pretty huge. However, the big thing that we wanted here was whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you get a 3/3 badger creature token because the honey badger don't give a shit. I don't know how much I just dated myself with that, but shut up. Next one, we said we were going to put like more ramp and stuff out, and we wound up putting a lot more token makers. As you can see with Spore Mound, this 5 mana 3/3 fungus landfall. Whenever you have a land enter the battlefield under your control, you get a sapperling, a 1/1 creature token. Just again, consistent tokens. We want to be going wide. This is going wide. You start here, you want to be here. You're here, I need you out there. That's what I want. Speaking of what I want, Titania's what I want, Nature's Force. This is a 6 mana elemental 6/6. You can play your force from the graveyard, so when we were talking about sacrificing them for the Constant Mist, or if somehow we get milled if somebody's a mill player, we can still be playing our lands. Whenever a land you control enters, you get a 5/3 green elemental creature token. Whenever an elemental dies, you do have the option to mill 3 cards, so that could even be the way that you're ramping, by putting some of your forces into your graveyard. You can play them from your graveyard. When you play them, you get a 5/3. When they die, you can mill 3 and start the process all over again. Last and certainly not least, Zendakar's Royal. This 5 mana enchantment will sit there and make you a 2/2 green elemental token every time you have a land enter the battlefield. Fantastic. We are at 42, if you see in the lower left hand of your screen. When we get to 52 from this next cut, after that we get to actually go to Sutina's page and see what we may have missed, what other people are building with her in the, I think it's 18 decks that we saw, was, at least for Landfall, was what EDHREC had scraped so far from the different data, or different websites that they data scrape. We're going to try to close this off. I don't have a specific category I need or want to fill out. I know our ramp is a little bit weak, but our commander itself is ramp. And honestly, so many other things are like, put more lands down. I don't think ramp's going to be our problem. If we can get there, great. If we can't, oh well. But give me 1 second, we'll be back with 10 more cards. We've done it. We've added 10 more cards. Oh, I should have scrolled up a little bit more, but you can see on the bottom there in the center of the columns, we finally got some ramp. Finally got some ramp. A little bit of ramp. One of our ramp cards is in card advantage. This is Throne of Eldraine. This 5 mana legendary artifact says you will choose a color as it enters the battlefield. Tap it to add 4 mana of the chosen color. Spend this mana only to cast mono-colored creatures of that color. Obviously, we're in mono green. That's not going to be a problem. For 3 mana, tap it, you can draw 2 cards, spend only mana of the chosen color to activate this ability. So, you just have to choose green mana. That seems like it's going to be pretty easy to do in a mono green deck. All the way down for Fogs, we have Arachnogenesis. 3 mana instant, create X 1/2 green spider creature tokens with reach, where X is the number of creatures attacking you. Prevent combat damage that would be dealt this turn by non-spider creatures. Interesting. If we were doing spiders, it would be even better. We're not, but that's okay, because it's still a good card. Over here in our massive ramp package, crop rotation for 1 mana, green instant. You sacrifice a land to search for a land card. Any land card, put that onto the battlefield and shuffle. There are going to be certain lands that we are interested in getting, and we're talking about those in a couple seconds, well, after the 52 to 62. But we will be talking about them. Entish Restoration. This 3-mana instant says sacrifice a land. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, instead search your library for up to 3 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. Luckily, even though we were kind of on the fence about the elemental bond, this is a little bit different. We are going to be putting counters on things and making them really big, so I think this will be fine, and I think we will very often be getting the 3 lands. Unless we were casting this so early in the game, like turn 3, that we just don't have the time to get a 4-power creature out. But either way, it'll still kind of escalate us a little bit up into like the mid game. Something you'll notice with the ramp spells that we did put in here, minus the throne, which is also on this list because of that tap ability to add the 4 or 5 mana, whatever it was. These all have a sacrifice a land clause with them. The reason for that is because we have been talking about some cards that care about lands going to the graveyard or bringing them back. So this is just kind of fueling, kind of synergizing everything together. I just think that's really cool. Like, for instance, really cool, Hero. 3-mana instance. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you sacrifice a land and you search for 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield, then shuffle. Fairly common spell. These don't enter tap, so that's kind of cool to mention, but other than that, like, again, it's very similar to some of the other cards that we're going to be looking at. What isn't going to be similar to some of the other cards that we're looking at is Karametra's Acolyte. This human druid is a 1/4, cost 4, and it taps to add an amount of green mana to your mana pool equal to your devotion to green. Devotion being how many pips are on the upper right hand card for the casting cost of your spells. All the permanents that we're going to have when they have green pips, that's what we're going to count up, and then we're going to make that much green mana. So this, if it's on the battlefield by itself, it's only tapping for 1 green. If it's on the battlefield with our commander, it's tapping for 2. If it's on the battlefield with anything like the Tribute to the World Tree, for instance, which is 3 green pips, it taps for 4, just those 2 cards. Not bad. Speaking of not bad, we have over here this Perilous Forays. I don't know if I'm saying that word right. This 5-mana enchantment allows you to pay 1, sacrifice a creature, and search your library for a land card with a basic land type, and put it on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. I have looped this in quite a few of my decks in my commander playing career. It's a lot of fun. We're going to have lots of dispensable creatures with all of our tokens. I mean, imagine having the Awaken the Woods where you make the Dryads, where they tap, sacrifice themselves to get a land. I don't know why. That's just funny to me. Rampant Growth is one of the few fetch spells where we did not have to sacrifice in order to go get something. It's just 2 mana, sorcery speed. Go find a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap. Nothing really to speak about. Classic. Roiling Regrowth, however, does require you to sacrifice a land. It is a 3-mana instant. You search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. It's as if these cards are functional reprints of each other. They are. That's the joke. And then the last card, you'll see it over there on the right. My favorite way to win a game is by infecting the entire table. I don't know why I got so serious about that. This 4-mana sorcery says until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample and infect. Infect says that instead of dealing damage to creatures, they deal in the form of -1/-1 counters. And instead of dealing damage to players, they get poison counters. If you get 10 poison counters in Commander, in Standard, in Modern, in Limited, in whatever, 10 poison counters, you're dead. It's like Commander damage, but on steroids or something. It's just my favorite way to win a game. It also helps with, just in general, giving things trample. We could have focused more on ways of giving all of our creatures trample because chump blockers are going to be a thing. I am hoping, in general, with the deck, that you just get to go wide enough to where that is not a problem. That they won't have enough chump blockers to defend all the way against you. And, yeah. So, for this last 10, as I've been saying, we're going to go over to EDHREC, we're going to type in Sutini's name, we're going to see what other people are catching that we have not caught so far. We'll be right back with 10 more of those cards, and then we're going to talk about lands. And then we're done. Nice, quick, and easy. Be right back. And here we are at 62 cards before we even talk about lands. I will say that we did look in Sutini's page, the top part of EDHREC, where it's talking about the new cards, the top cards, and the most energy, I think it is. We had most of that, and then what we didn't have at first was not super interesting. It actually took us a little bit to kind of eventually find some stuff that I was like, all right, yeah, that's the stuff that we're looking for. That's the meat and potatoes, of what we haven't gotten yet. So we're going to talk about those really quick. Down here on counters, this is in a couple different categories. Bow of Nylea. I mainly wanted this for the attacking creatures you control have Death Touch from this legendary enchantment artifact for 3 mana. The 2 mana tap ability allows you to choose a bunch of different things. The +1/+1 counter, the 2 damage to target creature with flying isn't probably very relevant. The gaining 3 life, so it's in life gain, or putting up to 4 target cards from your graveyard on the bottom of your library in any order. Kind of recursion. Not the greatest recursion because they're going on the bottom, but we have enough shuffle effects where I think that they'll wind up kind of shuffled up. And then we have Retreat to Kazandu. This is a 3 mana enchantment where when a land enters the battlefield under your control, you choose one, you either put a counter on a creature or gain 2 life. So it is over in the life gain category as well. Just, again, consistent +1/+1 counters getting moved around and everything like that. And if you don't have creatures to put counters on, you could just gain 2 life. It's also political in the sense of you can actually put the counters on anybody else's stuff too. You don't have to put them on yours. Obviously, that is the best option. But if you don't, it is what it is. Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider, is a 6 mana Phyrexian Praetor, 6/6 trample with haste. It is essentially the doubling season side, the top ability is the doubling season side for counters specifically. 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of those counters on that permanent or on that player. The bottom ability is the opposite, where it is having the effect for your opponent. So if an opponent would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or a player, they put half that many, rounded down. So it kind of shuts off other people's counter decks or like infect decks, or I think energy is as well. Experience I think is on the player. In general, still you get the point as far as that. I'm not 100% sure about the energy though, so I could be wrong on that. Apologies if I am. We put another fog in. I don't know why, like we got these little categories and then we were like, yeah, why not? We already run a few other of those effects, we might as well run this one. Galadrim Ambush is a 4 mana instant. You create X/1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens where X is the number of attacking creatures and prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn by non-elf creatures. It's Arachnogenesis but for elves. I don't know how we got here, but we here, we out here, we vibing. Over an interaction, we added one of green's very few ways and very limited ways of interacting with other people in the sense of these aura, enchantment auras. Song of the Dryads costs 3 mana. Enchant permanent. Enchanted permanent is a colorless forest land. I do like this one because it's not an enchant creature, it's enchant permanent. You can put this on somebody else's land if it's like somebody's Cabal Coffers. You can turn it into a forest and then, as far as I know, they lose abilities. Unless I don't know how to play this game, which is also very possible. Down here on ramp, and this is in a couple of categories as well, is Kodama of the West Tree. This is a very cool card that I have wanted to put in a couple different decks lately. 3 mana, 3/3 with reach. Modified creatures you control have trample. Modified creatures are creatures that are equipped, auras you control, or have counters on them. So those are your modifications. I'm sorry, equipment, auras, or counters are modifications. So all these things that we're putting +1/+1 counters on, those are modifications, those are modified creatures. Giving them trample is really important. That's why it's also over in the win con, because it allows us to maybe smash face a little bit more with somehow giving our creatures a bunch of counters. Also, whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, and then shuffle. So that is why it is in the ramp package for things. Over into the tokens is a Spring Heart Nantuko. This Insect Monk costs 2 mana, is a 1/1. It could be a enchantment, an aura for the bestow cost of 1 in the green. Enchanted creature would get +1/+1 because it is a 1/1. That's usually how the bestow creatures work. It also has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1 in the green if it is attached to a creature you control. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature. If you didn't create a token that way, you get a 1/1 green insect instead. I like the idea of putting this on, let's say, the Rampaging Ballast. Land enters battlefield, you make another Rampaging Ballast. Then you put a land on the battlefield, Rampaging Ballast and Rampaging Ballast triggers, and then you make another rampage. You know what I mean? It just gets kind of crazy really quickly if it stays on the battlefield and if we are able to hit all of our extra land drops like we are hoping to do. Then in the win cons, we put up a lot of different cards. We already talked about the Kodama. There's also a Champion of Landfall, 3-mana Human Warrior. When creatures with power less than it can't block creatures you control. So it kind of makes your big creatures nigh unblockable once everybody else's creatures are smaller. Basically says no chump blockers, no chumps. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put a counter on Champion of Landfall. So that's how you're going to make Champion get really big, really fast, as you know, you're making these tokens and stuff like that. Then they can't be blocked because they're so big. As long as Champion of Landfall it gets big itself. Dust Shell Crawler is again another card where it kind of is caring about giving trample and stuff like that. It's a 2-mana 0/2 insect. 0/3 insect. When it enters, you do put a counter on something that's kind of cute, and then each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. Again, we're caring about not having trump blockers stop us from what we want to do, and this is a great way of doing it for just 2 mana. That's not bad. Last but not least, because we already talked about Kodama and the Triumph, is Overwhelming Stampede, and it is the beautiful Lord of the Rings one with the Overwhelming Stampede of Elves. It is a 5-mana sorcery. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain trample and get +X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. You are very quickly going... I mean, even if you just have a Rampaging Ballast token, like a 4/4, getting +4/+4 when you're so wide and trample is huge. I don't care if all you had are like 51 ones, that's another 50 power and then trample. That's not bad. It is a way to help win the game. And that's it. We are now up to 38 remaining cards. I'm going to go through Sutina's page. We're going to look at the lands. Because it is a monocolored deck, I do not foresee a huge amount of non-basic lands that are like super crazy, super out of control. But let's take a look. Let's see what we can find. And then we'll be right back to talk about all the lands probably at once, unless there are so many non-basics that we have to kind of cut it up. But again, I don't foresee that really happening. Give me 1 second, okay? You remember how I said I don't think there's going to be enough non-basic lands to separate them? Because obviously like non-color fixing lands, I guess. It shouldn't just be non-basic lands, especially in a monocolored deck. But anyway, we're going to go down this as quick as we can because there's a whole bunch of different named lands and they all do different things and they're all valuable and blah 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 blah. Let's try to like knock this out. Boseiju, kind of removal. Dark Depths. Thespian Stage is in here. You can kind of have the Thespian Stage become a Dark Depths. You have to sacrifice them both, but the Thespian Stage is being sacrificed because it doesn't have counters and you can get the 2020 Martlage. Cycle Land, just nothing there. Evolving Wilds, it helps you get your basics out. Field of the Dead, we have so many lands with different names, including different kinds of forests with the snow-covered forest. So it's again a token maker. Some of our forests. Ghost Quarter to get rid of other people's really special lands. Colony Garden, we'll make a plant token and then we can bounce it with our commander's trigger and then replay it and again get another token. Land of War Reborn. Graft will put a counter on something and then we can again recycle this as we are potentially bouncing something back up to our hand with our commander. Mosswort Bridge. We very easily should have 10 or greater power among all of our creatures with +1/+1 counters, and then our commander can bounce it after we played the hideaway card, and then we can do it again. Mirrored Landscape, you're turning 1 land into 2 lands. Nykthos, same thing we talked about with Karamitra's Acolyte. It's going to tap for equal to our devotion of green, and we should very quickly have a very high devotion of green. Orin-Reach the Vastwood, put a +1/+1 counter on each green creature that enters the battlefield. Very good for when we have our explosive turns, like the Arachneogenesis or the Galadrin Ambush or the Avenger of Zendikar. We could just put a bunch of counters right out. Just super good. Radiant Fountain. You gain 2 life and you can recycle it with your commander. Scavenger Grounds. Grave Hate. Snow-covered forest so that you have just even more chances to hit different colored or different named lands. Strip Mine. What did I just say? Strip Mine, again, hitting other people's important lands. Talon Gates of Madara. Interesting card. Phasing out basically somebody else's thing so that if it's stopping you from doing something or stopping you from attacking or it's a scary blocker or it's their life gain card or whatever, tap or bring this down, phase it out. If your commander can trigger and you can bring it up and down, then, I mean, great. Terramorphic Expanse, same thing as the Evolving Wilds. Thespian Sage, really just there for the Dark Depths. Tranquil Thicket, Cycle Land. Tyrite Sanctum, +1/+1 counter, and also can turn your commander into a god, and then you can sacrifice it to make your god indestructible via a counter, which is really nice. And then you have ways of getting lands back, so this is even reusable. And finally, the War Room. Paying life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity to draw a card. We only have one color in our color identity. Pay a life, tap 3, draw a card. Not bad. There's a lot. There's a lot. But if you liked this deck, and I think it did go very well. It's a lot expensive actually. Upwards of almost $700. There are a few choice cards that you could take out. As far as replacing them, I'm not 100% sure. If you wanted to replace like the doubling season, if you wanted to worry about the tokens instead of the counters, a Parallel Lives is a little bit less expensive. I digress. No, it's not. You just have to find other ways of either making more counters or making more tokens, something like that. Ultimately, it's a lot of ramp, so you should be casting at your really big things really fast, and then you're just trying to find ways to loop your land plays or having them go to the graveyard and bringing them back in order to get value from your landfall. If you want to see how the deck works out, you could, for free, go down into the video description, look at the Moxfield deck link, and go into Moxfield's playtester, and you can play it yourself. I am going to, with Twitch chat right now, playtest this a good 2-3 times. That video will be up on Patreon and also up for Twitch subscribers on the Discord when this video comes out. So if you're watching this, it's already available for people who, for as little as $1 a month, want to help financially support the channel and the content that we make. If you don't want to, again, feel free to playtest it yourself. Let me know in the comments how it goes for you, or if you have cards that you would take out, cards that you would put in. Let me know if you would take out maybe some of the ramp for some other stuff, etc. All good times. Make sure you do subscribe to the channel. Again, we are trying to get to 500 before the end of 2025. I would absolutely love to see that. We are still early on in the year, and I am hoping that the next few sets, like with the shorts and stuff that we're going to make, that we can get there. By the time this comes out, we will probably already have picked out the giveaway for January, but in February I'll do another giveaway. So follow me on Blue Sky for that. Also make sure you're in the Discord, because I'll probably talk about it on the Discord. I might announce that next one on YouTube, just to, again, try to get that subscriber count up. And that's it. Feel free to join us on Friday nights at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time over on twitch.tv/TheSethCross for the Spell Table Shenanigans gameplay series, and then 8 p.m. on Saturdays for this series if you want to be here live and help us make the decks. I really had fun with this. This is my favorite kind of content that I make outside of the shorts, really, because the shorts are fun too. But I absolutely love getting to hang out with people in chat and do this, and then the edits are always fun, and then seeing how y'all interact with it and stuff, that's always a good time. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. See you next time. Peace.